Welcome back. I'm going to try something new. I'm Dennis Taylor. Like you didn't already know that. But they say that helps the algorithms if you do that. We've been watching some YouTube and the guys that say, "Hi, I'm Matt." They get like 1 million views on a video, and Nick sent me a post that said that you got to introduce yourself at the beginning. So again, hi, I'm Dennis Taylor. And you're supposed to tell what you're going to do in this episode. So in this episode, we're going to get the 55 ready for sick week. So sick week's coming up in 3 weeks, I think. So there's not a lot of time left. I've been on Clint's car, and we finished that last night. Nick welded, I welded couple days ago for 8 hours under the dash trying to get the thing ready. Nick finished the welding last night. He did all the main bars, all the nice TIG welds, and I did what I needed to do to finish it. So it's ready to go. This has been sitting in the corner by the truck over there for, when was that car show that we went to?
I think it's been 2 months.
2 months?
I think.
So somewhere around 2 months. And I had forgot about going to the car show. I was thinking it's going to be on alcohol, which I haven't drained the alcohol since drag week. I haven't done anything. We honestly backed it in there, and that's where it stayed until we went to the car show, and I switched it over to gasoline. So that was good. I didn't have to do anything there. It's all the injectors are clean because they're on gasoline. So she got in it, fired it up. It didn't crank, I bet 4 or 5 rounds, and it lit off. No smoke, it ran so good. She let it warm up. Moved it over here. I'm getting ready to lift it up. I did take the trunk lid off the other day, and we've had some angry idiot mice. Debbie's caught 4 or 5 of them in traps, but they thought that the top of our street tank would be a good place to not even make a nest. They just got up there and crapped. So the top of the battery was covered in mouse pills, and the top of the tank, so I'm going to clean all this up before I lift it, and then I'm going to lift it up. We got new wheels coming. They should be here next week.
And what brand wheels?
New Billet Specialty wheels. And the reason we're doing that, Mickey Thompson's, we're going to go testing with them, and we're going to run the same tire that we have, which is the Big Bubba, but these are on 16 diameter, 16 wide wheels. Mickey wants us to try an 18-inch wide wheel and a still 16-inch diameter. Same tire, we're just going to stretch it out a little bit. We're going to try to get this thing where we can hit it harder. Mile per hour is like a 630 car. Actually, if it was light enough and the short numbers are good, it would go 16s or 20s based on the mile per hour. But it doesn't, and that's all because of our short numbers. So our test sessions are going to be based on trying to get the 60 foot and the 330 down, and we just never have really hit it hard enough. And every time we do, we're on a fine edge of, if we blow the tires off or if it goes. So we've never really been worried about it. We're not in a big hurry to set records or anything like some are. We're honestly just having a good time going 670s, but we're going to try to speed up the whole thing, lower the ET, but do it. It's not going to be out the back door. This thing back halves like stink. I mean, people said, when we built it, why would you build a 55 Chevy to go 6 seconds? Well, this thing goes, it's going almost 220 miles an hour. It's not hurting. The aerodynamics are not killing it. They're not affecting the short times. It's just weight distribution, floor link, and shock settings. We're going to work on that wheelie bar settings. Try to get the short numbers down when we go testing. The wheels should help a little bit. We may move some weight around, try to put a little bit more back here and work on some floor link adjustments. We're just now trying to dial that in. So that's our goal when we go to Florida soon. I just got to get it up. I'm going to change the first gear ratio in the transmission. I think we're going to change the third member, not the gear ratio, but I think we're going to freshen it up. And what else? Yeah, I'm going to put a tighter converter in it. Man, I forgot about that. But it's no big deal. I'm gonna have transmission out anyway. I knew there was two things I wanted to do. I'm gonna tighten the converter up and change the first gear ratio. Just look everything over, change the oil. I might even use a Fram filter because everybody really likes Fram filters. Poor Nick, he posted a video of his motor that kicked a rod out the side, and all the internet experts have told him they don't respect him anymore. They thought he knew what he was doing, blah, 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 blah. Because he had a Fram filter on the thing. It's a race car. This filter on here is a Moroso filter, and it's about like a screen wire on a screen door. You're keeping the big chunks out, but they're blaming Nick's rod breaking on the Fram filter. Like that makes any sense. The big end still spins on the crankshaft. It had nothing to do with oil pressure or oil filtering. So I'm just kidding. I'm gonna put my same old Moroso race filter back on it, change the oil in it, change the transmission fluid since I'm going into the transmission. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't even change the fluid in the transmission. Clean it up, and I think that's about it. We'll be ready to load it.
And who gets to go this time? She's walking into the picture.
Mika, are you going to the race? Are you gonna go race? You gonna go to Florida and race? Okay, you saw that I wiped it down. I'm really impressed. Just did a whole, whatever it was, 1,000 miles on drag week, and there was very little to clean up. Usually there's more oil leaks in the engine, and I don't know why, but when it's not happy with life. It just doesn't do well. It'll leak oil, whatever. I don't know. It has no oil leaks to speak of. They always seep a little bit out of a fitting or something. The transmission pan seeped a little bit. I mean, nothing, not like drip. The belly pans, I put the absorbent mat in it before we went on drag week. It's still, I'm not going to change it. It's still perfect. Just a little bit of seepage. The gear vendor had a little bit of fluid on the bottom of it, but that was out of the speedometer adapter. So it's just the speedometer cable leaking a little bit. I'm not even probably going to fix that. I'll probably just put it right back like it was. I expect to have some leaks and some cleanup after 1,000 miles of street driving, a bunch of passes, but it doesn't bother me. So the rear end, it had a little bit of oil around it, and I can see at the top, the gasket is kind of smashed. These things really take a beating. Let me grab a 9/16 wrench and just check. They work so hard, and they try to move around in the case. So the bolts are still tight. That's nice. They're not always tight. I tightened them up before drag week, and they're still very tight. So it's just seeping out of the gasket. But these third members, think of the power that they take. The multiplication of first gear and launching 3,200 pound car and going as fast as this thing goes. These third members try to twist out of the housings, and it just puts a load on everything. So the gaskets will tend to leak a little bit, but I think we're going to take the rear end out and have it freshened anyway. It's got a lot of passes on it. Quick Performance takes care of that for us, so I got to get it out and get it. Actually, we have another one. We have an 1/8 mile geared rear end that we'll probably send in and have the gear switched to a 1/4 mile gear. We don't race 1/8 mile, so no need to have that, and we'll switch it out when it gets here. But Quick Performance, man, they knock it out of the park. I can't say enough good about those guys. They know how to set a rear end up. Alex spent big money on a billet rear end to try to solve our gear wearing issues a couple years ago. The billet rear end failed on the very first pass. The gears, we sent it back, they replaced it, repaired it free of charge, said that we used the wrong oil, which is what they recommended, and they admitted to it, but we put it in and ran it, and it didn't last a race. It's already noisy. So it's not all just about billet. The world doesn't have to just be about billet. This is a strange cast third member. It's got 10-inch gear in it, and they just work. I mean, we get multiple races out of a ring and pinion as long as Quick's doing it, and this is one of those. It's got, I don't even know, 3 or 4 or 5 races on it, you know, and that's 3, 4, 5,000 street miles on a pro gear. It's not a street gear, it's a pro gear. It's a soft ring and pinion. So to get that many miles out of a ring and pinion is really doing something right. And it's still not bad. It's just that it's, you know, we can hear just a little bit of noise on deceleration, but it's not, we'd run it 2 more races. But I think we're going to change it, and I'm going to pull the gear vendor out. I'm just going to put it right back in. It's doing perfect. Transmission, I'm changing first gear in it, and the converter, I'm tightening that up. I'm going to drain these fluids. So let's roll something under here. The oil change thing. Good. But I don't see any point of putting it back in. Okay, so that's still red. Doesn't smell burned. Still looks good. That's got a lot of passes and a lot of miles on it. I'm going to let that drain. I'm going to let it drip in that. Put the plug back in. I'll let it drip in the pan for a while and get all the fluid from up above drip down into the pan, and then I can take the transmission out and not have quite as much of a mess. It'll still make a mess, but anything you can do helps. Yeah, that's still very nice. Yeah, it's just, I almost feel like running that stuff through a filter and putting it back in. Too late now, and I'm glad, because that's dumb. Transmission fluid isn't that expensive. No more of it than we use anymore. We used to use a lot because we were having so many transmission problems, but once we got the Sonax module in here, this one's running that new module. It's actually a small main shaft, which I did not trust. I didn't think I would ever have a small main shaft again because I broke multiples, but they've got a better small main shaft now, and this one's been in here. We carry a spare just in case, and it's got that Sonax module. So if it ever, you know, and it's, and what I say, if isn't really the right word. You can't overspeed this one because you can always speed at the same RPM. Like if you put it neutral at the top of a pass, for instance, you overspeed the forward drum, or the direct drum rather. And if it's a cast iron drum, you can explode that cast iron drum and cut the transmission in half and cut your leg off and or kill you, put fluid everywhere. So you use billet drums. My other transmission had a billet aluminum direct drum and a steel billet forward drum. The forward drum won't overspeed, but the way the Sonax module is, you have whatever it is, and don't quote me, but a third or a fourth of the weight of that drum, and you're not overspeeding it. All you would be overspeeding would be the little hub that's in the middle of the clutches and the clutches themselves. It's not going to blow up. So this has got the Sonax module in it, and that's the fluid after numerous races. Man, I couldn't be happier with that. I'll be taking it apart, and I'll look at the clutches and look for anything that might be wrong, but all I'm taking it apart to do is put the gear set in the tail end of this thing. Otherwise, I just put fluid in and put it back together. And while I'm at it, we're going to take this awesome billet Pro Torque, or bolt together Pro Torque converter apart, and I'm going to change the stator. I'm going to tighten the stator up in it. We've got 2 of these converters. I was just thinking there, as I said that, I might just put the other whole converter in, because I've got it stamped with the numbers, what the stator and the fins and everything, and about the stator, the angle and the fin count. I've got it stamped, and I hate to mix those up, so I'll probably just take this converter out and put the other one in. I have to take it apart and make sure I haven't robbed something out of it, because we tend to do that on occasion when we're on a drag and drive and running out of time. But so first thing I'm going to do is pull the drive shaft out. Okay, there's the U-joint cut, whatever you call them. Now I'm going to pull the drive shaft out. I've got a plug here. Slide it in place of the drive shaft. I should have taken the yoke down, wishbone down first, and I know you're gonna think you're beating that carbon fiber drive shaft on stuff. I'm not. It's the ends of it that are beating on there. So that's in great shape. So I'm gonna leave that. Now, I am going to, you can see that one of the things a lot of people do is they just have their drive shaft open inside the car. That just smokes. You know, when you do your burnout, the smoke just filters in. So I've got this heavy housing to contain the U-joint in case it explodes. And I don't have to have these aluminum plates here, but I do. So I'm going to take these aluminum covers off. That's what keeps most of the smoke out of the car. So let's get those off. I'm going to go ahead and drain the gear vendor. It doesn't hurt to change the fluid in them. They're like everything else. It only holds a few ounces, less than a quart. And that fluid gets pretty hot. It's a little bit dark, so it's a good move. We'll drain the gear vendor. Otherwise, the way I have to do this is take it loose here at the adapter, slide it back here, and drop it down out of this opening. I'm gonna have an armpit full of fluid coming out of the thing. So all that's left is pulling the 1/4 inch nuts, little 7/16 stubby wrench. And while it's draining, I'll do that, and then we'll take this unit out of here. Okay, so the nuts are off. There's 8 1/4 inch nuts that hold this thing on. You just slide it out and put this rag under here because it will probably leak a little bit of fluid. We've had to do this so many times at the track, but that's the whole gear vendor unit right there. And they're pretty bulletproof. There's just a few of us that's ever broken them. And it's always been the shaft. Sometimes you can just pull that shaft out. It's almost always the shaft, but Rick has got that beefed up, and that hasn't been a problem for a while. So, drive shaft, gear vendors out. Next, I'm gonna drop the converter, take the bolts out of the converter. And I've already taken one transcooler line off. I think I'll go ahead and take that other one off now. It always drains a little bit of fluid once you take the second line off. Looks like I got that far yesterday. It was actually off. I forgot. We got sidetracked. Lonnie Grimm came and inspected the chassis, or the cage that we did in Clint's car. And that kind of took most of my day. What is that funny noise?
It's the light or something back here. Neon.
So when I pull these lines off, I will blow through and flush the fluid out of my transcooler. But I'm gonna plug the lines for now because they tend to drip for about, I don't know, a year and a half. So that's out of the way. Now, I did get as far yesterday as pulling a few converter bolts. Looks like I got the one that I could reach, or the 2 or 3, and I saw my wrench. These things here will knock your teeth out. I haven't had a tooth broke yet, but I've always worried about it. I took the grinder to this one yesterday. When that's on compression, it's tough to turn. I took the grinder to it and changed the angle, because once they slip, they're kind of like a Phillips screwdriver bit or screwdriver. Once they slip, that's all they want to do for the rest of their existence. So I changed the angle just a little bit, and it seems to be working. So I Loctite my converter bolts in. They will work loose. I really don't have a problem with them. Sometimes if we're on a race and I don't have Loctite handy, I'll just put them back in. The old Loctite holds pretty good. I've personally never had trouble with the torque converter bolts coming loose, but we have had flywheel come loose a couple times. It cost Alex a Rocky Mountain Race Week one year. That was on an LS. I can't say I remember it on my big block stuff, but it probably has. That's one of those that's hard all the way out because of the Loctite. Ouch. I honestly wouldn't even have to re-Loctite them, because that's still got so much pressure on it. Okay. So I've got spacers in here that I carefully machined just to set the gap. 3/16 is what I need or want on my flywheel. So we'll get this torque converter loose, and then I got a couple lines to take loose and a couple wires, and then we can pull this bad boy out. So I got all the lines loose. There's just the transcooler lines and the sensor lines, and then converters loose. And always remember, if you do that right there with the main line pressure sensor unhooked, it'll squirt oil all the way across the lift here. So I got the bell housing bolts loose. I'm going to knock these cross member bolts out. Slide out of my way. That didn't take very long. So I'll take all these cross member bolts out. We'll come back. I'll get these 2 trans mount bolts. And we'll get this thing jacked up and out of here. Take the last bell housing bolt out. It's just finger tight. Put it up here with the others. I think I'm ready to rock and roll. Yep, that's it. While I'm here, I'm gonna look at the flex plate, make sure I don't see any cracks. Sometimes that grease slings out, or Loctite, whatever it may be, oil from the rear main or pan, and it'll look like a crack, and it's not really. So as you can see, that just came out, and sometimes this will be oily around here. There's just a little trace of oil right here on the mid plate. And I don't know where that came from. It could be when I take the valve cover drain, there's a drain back. Actually, I said this was turbo drain backs yesterday. It's actually valve cover drain backs. That could have leaked just a little bit, but whatever. That's it right there. This thing just did drag week and doesn't even have a seep of oil under it. That's not even enough to show up on a rag. So let's take this back to the table. You can watch me struggle. I'll move my nice new Chinesium socket set so I don't get it nasty. You get to see the ugly side of my table. This side, you'll see what it's all about here in just a minute. I made this table and I've done so many transmissions on here. Come around to this side. That side is a storage unit, but I've made it where I open these up. I've got 3 sides that I can put my parts on, and I use all 3 sides. But first, let's get this Pro Torque out of here, and I'm going to drain it right here into the hole. There you can see how nice and clean that fluid still is. There's not much to drain out of it. So I've got a drawer underneath there that will collect all that oil. All right, I'm gonna go get a Bondo spreader. I'll be right back. All right, so you guys are saying, I knew he was a hack. I've been waiting for this moment. He's gonna put Bondo on his transmission. No. It works great for raking the oil, but see, you can see the oil still very clean. I love seeing that. If that was black, I'd be concerned, but it's not. So I'm gonna let that drain just a minute. Then I'm gonna turn it up and get it out of the way, because when I take it apart, I can clean it up on this table. Let's just get it out of the way for now. I'm not sure I'm gonna take it apart, honestly. I decided yesterday that I was just gonna replace it with the other one. They're exactly the same. And there's Mika Moose. She's hanging out close because she thinks the 55 is getting ready, and she knows that that means it's going somewhere. And she's intending to go with it this time. She didn't get to go last time. So she thinks if she stays close, she can go this time. So let me get some tools back here and we'll start taking that apart. Set these bolts over here on this other table that I set up last night. That's what I officially call my tables, my workbenches. I don't like permanent workbenches because they become junked up like everything else around here. Okay, bell housing off. For those of you who've never messed with this, that thing registers around that ring right there, and it fits darn tight. You can see that's a tight fit. So I'll clean that up a little bit when we go to put it back together. Look at the size of that input shaft. That's some nice big stuff. Now I'm going to turn it over. You gotta be careful because there's always stuff sticking out on these things. We're going to take the pan off and then the front pump. Let me find my socket. It may be out there on the, there's one. I've already had the pan down. The way the transmission angle's in this car, if you don't drop the pan, you won't get all the fluid out of it. So I had already dropped the pan, and while I was at it, I cleaned the inside of it. But you can see the color of the fluid. It's still very clean. Got 2 big magnets in there. Greg Nader from Sonex put in. He's a big believer in magnets, and there's a good reason. It works. Let me find a 1/2-inch socket. I've tried everything with these transmissions. I had fancy rear mount filters, and this is a stock 400 filter, but it's a high flow, the screen type, brass screen, or that it doesn't even look brass. I think it is brass though. We'll replace that. All right, I need to do some body work. Okay, let's go ahead and drop the valve body. And the main reason for dropping the valve body is because we got to get to the center support bolt. So I need a 5/16 and a 1/4 inch 12-point socket. And that's that 5/16 that's broken, and Snap-on for some reason can't seem to get one. But didn't we buy some new junky ones? I think you went to the store and bought 2 or 3 Ching Chong ones.
I think so.
I think that heater should be turned off. This is a Extreme Automatics 1st and 2nd gear leave trans brake, and it's an awesome piece. It's so fast. I personally never worked with Lonnie Dyers from Extreme Automatics. I work with Jake from Jake's Performance, and him and Lonnie are good friends. Even though they're in competition with each other, they try to maintain it where they don't do necessarily the same products. They have a good working relationship. They both build trans brake valve bodies and things of that nature, but not exactly the same. They don't copy each other. They use each other for advice. Let me try to knock my socket off of there. That's stuck. There we go. In these valve bodies, there's only one ball. Big plastic ball. I'm not going to get into a transmission rebuild session because there's plenty of those on the internet to argue about, because everybody's a transmission expert. But there's the one big ball. You can see everything's pretty clean. A little bit of clutch dust. That's no biggie. Okay, so there's the center support bolt. I'm going to go ahead and take that out right now while I'm here. And this is one from Alan
Pope.
Alan Pope Transmissions. So it's actually a socket head Allen bolt that it's got a hole drilled in it. And he does different size holes for different size applications. but that's the one that's in this. He sent that to me when we put the Sonex module in it. We put that in to restrict the fluid to the intermediate clutches. Now, let's go ahead and take the, hold still. Stay right there. Take the servo off. Put all this stuff right in here and set it aside. Look at the size of that spring. So that's super strong. That's a valve spring basically. That pulls the intermediate clutches off really fast. So you don't, when you let the button out, you don't burn the intermediates up. Oh, actually that's a band, I'm sorry. That's why I don't want to do a video on doing transmissions. If I say something wrong and don't catch it, there's plenty of people that'll figure it out. Okay, so I put it over on my handy dandy stool. This stool has built lots of transmissions, but I'm going to take my old bead roller dies and I use all thread and make a pump puller. I'll put it over here real quick. Let that fluid drain. I'm not looking to rebuild anything. I'm just out to change gear ratios, but in the process I'm going to look everything over and make sure it all looks okay. Like that gasket that I could have just torn. Looks like it is torn. That doesn't look like I just did that though. That's odd. I hope I've got a gasket. See where the other piece is. It's not up there. It doesn't really matter because it's sealed out here. That's not a passage, but I want to find a gasket to replace there. So let's put that aside. Now for the good stuff. The Sonex module. I think you probably heard me say module a few times. That's it. That's replacing the drums. Or the drum. Let me find my glasses. And I don't want to take it apart. I have no reason to. I'm going to look down in the holes at clutch thicknesses and the steels and see if I see any signs of wear, heat. And it's really hard to say. I see a little bit of heat. So I may pull that snap ring and look at that, but I think I'm not going to do that yet. Set that aside. Keep our stuff cleaned up here. Now I get to start taking snap rings out. This is part of the module too. It's the hub. So let's put that bad boy right there. It's a one-way clutch. There's our intermediate clutches. Let me get a couple screwdrivers, snap ring stuff. Take the clutches out. My stool's a little bit high for a short person. Is that politically incorrect?
No.
a little people. You're a little people.
I think we have something I could put this phone in.
Man, that's kind of hard to get to move. The snap ring groove happens to be right in the worst place it could be. I'm gonna have to struggle to get that snap ring out. Holy cow. There. Got a little bit of space behind it. It's right, the groove fell right between the lugs on the case. I couldn't raise it up. I'm gonna set that snap ring right there. I'll take this stack of clutches out and we'll look at it real quick. Look at those intermediates. They look like they were just put in there. No sign of heat, barely any sign of contact. That's awesome. Okay, let's set those right there. Now that center support, there's a snap ring in that bad boy. It's really not that bad of a boy as for center support. It's basically a stock center support. The transmission that I had in here had a billet aluminum center support because it has a large main shaft. And this has got the standard size main shaft. But I still gotta get that snap ring out. Yeah, I got under it, got it hooked, got part of it pulled up. I'm just going to walk it out. Okay, and that snap ring has a bevel on one side, and that bevel is pointing up. That's the way that goes. Now, I've already taken the center support bolt out. I think I can just lift. Oh, let's see. On this one, this uses a 4L80 style center support. I'm not going to go out there and find the proper wrench. I'm just going to use this crescent wrench. So on a Turbo 400, which this is, you normally wouldn't have to do this. But we're lubing the center support through the pump here, through this transfer line. And because of that, it uses a 4L80 center support. And it was tight. And I'll show you why this has to come out first. On a 400, that hole isn't even drilled and tapped. But see that snout that goes into, you can see where an O-ring has rubbed. I see a hair on my finger. But there's an O-ring in that center support that goes into. So now I can just raise that up and get it out of the way. There's nothing there really to go wrong except bushings, seals. That's a piston, and I know for a fact that didn't have a problem or those clutches would be burned. So now I put this together originally with Jake, and it went to Sonax and had some modifications done. It's been a long time since I've been in here, so I'm going to watch what I do carefully, because I could honestly forget the way this stuff goes together. Like that right there, when they say it's rollerized, that bearing is not typically in a Turbo 400. That's usually a plastic bushing. So there's the stator tube. I think that's a stock piece. I don't remember if we bought a aftermarket one or not, and I can't tell by looking at it. So I think I can if I could get a hold of that. I think it'll come up. It may not. It may be the park pawl. No, park paw's not holding it. What is holding it? Let me think about it just a minute. I guess I'm gonna have to pull that. I don't have a lot of strength today for some reason. Take all this goodie out of here. Some of this gets replaced. So I'm gonna stack it right here. Now I can take the clutch, the band out, which is not fun on a reed case. If you do it, if you hold your mouth just right, it'll pop right out. If you don't, you gotta struggle with it every time. Because on a reed case, these lugs that hold that center support and those clutches are all the way around the transmission case, 360 degrees. On Turbo 400 case, they're missing a big part of them. And that's what you have to put adapters and what have you in there to make that work, to make it stiff for race car stuff. So this is the part we're after, is those gears in there. That's the old stuff. Here's the new stuff over here from Cohen. We're gonna put that back in. This is a 184 gear set. That's a 210. So I don't think I'm gonna go any deeper. I'm not even gonna clean it because there's no reason. There's not any sign of metal. There's no sign of any problems in there. So I'm gonna work on this for a little bit. I'm gonna raise one of my wings and get a workbench set up. And once I figure this out, we'll come back and talk about it. So like everything else, it kind of snowballed on us. So you see the transmission kind of blown apart here. And I was at the point of putting the new gear set. Here's the old gear set. Here's the new gear set. I started putting it together. This is the new park pawl drum and the part that the gear set runs in and everything. But as soon as I started taking it apart, for instance, this is the old 210 ring gear. This is the new 184. It's like, I feel like bigger's better. I am very adamant about the thickness here being important. The 210 is thicker. This one here is thicker than the 186. So that bothered me a little bit. Then I got to noticing, here's the 210 gear set. You see 5 big pinions. I'm just guessing 1.25 inches in diameter. 5 of them. This one's got 4 little bitty, maybe 1 1/8 inches. A lot smaller. These may be 1 5/16 inches. These are tiny. There's just 4 of them. So I started questioning quite a bit. So the other side of this is over here. You see 6 pinions on the 210 gear set. Over here, you see 4. It looks like 8, but it's a pinion driving a pinion, and there's only 4 of them. And the shafts are very small. So that bothered me. And then I get to looking at the sun gear tube here. This is the 210. This goes down in, it's nice and solid, one piece, not neck down. This is the one that would be with the 186. So see how this slides on, it just barely halfway goes into that gear. And it's very loose, very thin, as opposed to that gear set. And they do what they can do. To get the gear ratio, they have to make this stuff different sizes, and that's fine, and it's possibly fine as it is. But just to be sure, I called our friend Alan Pope at Alan Pope Transmissions in Florida. He's the one that helps us out with a lot of these parts and our contact with Cohen, and he called Cohen. He doesn't use this 186 gear or 184 that I'm putting in here. Typically in the big power stuff, they go with a 177 or a 161 first gear. He's used a lot of 210s, but not so much anymore. Lower power stuff, they'll use 210s, but the big power stuff, kind of like where we are and above, they use a 177 or a 161 gear ratio. And Alan's worked with Cohen, and they've increased the lubrication to those two gear sets I just mentioned, as well as the strength. They've got steel parts in here where this is aluminum. Alan called Cohen and talked to him about this new 184 gear set, and they agreed that it's not as strong as the 210. Well, that bothers me. I don't want to put something weaker in this car. I don't want any more transmission problems. Whether it would live or not, they can't tell you. They won't tell you. They will never give you that definition whether it'll live or not. So I just don't want to take the chance. I called Alex. I said we either have to put the 210 back in or risk it with this 184, which could make the car go faster, the 184. But we're taking stronger parts out and putting weaker ones in. So that's not an option. So the second option or third option is to buy a new gear set. Well, that's big money, but Alex was okay with doing it. So I got to order a brand new 177 gear set, which Cohen is shipping out Monday, and it's enough that I could buy a pretty nice little car for the price of this gear set. But that gives us a higher first gear ratio than we've ever had. 177 is what I went with. Instead of 186 is what we used to run, we're now 210. So that's going to allow us to throw more power at this thing. And I hope that I shouldn't have went down to a 166 or a 161, but we're balancing things out. So on a race car situation, we'd have been better off with the 161. Ours is a heavy street car pulling that big chunk of trailer with lots of spare parts in it. So with a 161 taking off and driving on the street, you're building a lot of heat in the torque converter. So I'm in between. We're balancing. I've talked to Alex about it, and we both agreed, and so did Alan Pope, that 177 is probably the optimum gear ratio. So now, this is Friday. I've got a transmission scattered here. They're going to, luckily, Cohen's going to send the gear set out Monday, so we'll get it the end of next week, which gives us enough time. We're in good shape on time. But I'm going to go ahead and put this back together and get the 184 gear set boxed back up in a box. If anybody needs a 184 gear set, if you got 2,000, 2,500 horsepower, maybe a lighter car, 184 is a great gear set. It just as much power as we're making, as hard as we want to hit this thing, we'll probably be leaving on 15 pounds or more of boost. If that's not your game and you want a 184 gear set, hit me up. I'll sell it to you. It's in stock at DT Hot Rods. So we just don't have a need for it now, brand new in the box. But I'm going to put it back together just because I don't want to sit around here getting dust in it all week, and we'll just cool it on the car for now. There's nothing else for me to do. So guess what? I might be able to work on my Volkswagen. Huh? Maybe? Debbie?
Maybe.
What else am I going to do? We got rid of Clint's car. What?
You have another car in there to work on.
The booth?
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, I may have to work on a customer car. Sad face. She's a slave driver. So whatever the case is, I'm going to get this back together, and it'll stay together for a week, and then I'll pull it back apart and put the new gear set in it. So we better go see who's at the door. The dogs think there's somebody at the door. Well, that didn't work out like I planned. I intended for that transmission to go right back together, go in the car, and be quick and easy, but that gear set kind of threw a monkey wrench into gears. But anyway, as you can see, it's together. It's literally ready to go in the trailer. I just got to put the front cap on, and she can back it in the trailer, and we can head out. But come back for part 2 of this thing. Since it turned into that gear set being a problem, the video turned out to be longer than I intended, and it's going to be a 2-part video. We're going to go ahead and edit it right now so it'll be ready to go while we're gone testing next week. I'll have it scheduled to post, so I think we'll probably put it out Tuesday, I would imagine. So come back for part 2 because I try to help. Some of you might not know what a trans brake is or how it is to spool turbos. There's a lot to it. And I try to take a little bit of time and explain to you how that is, and you'll get to see the thing start up and spool here on the lift like we always do. That's basically our test and tune before we go test and tuning. So come back and see part 2 of it, and don't forget to go to Alex's store, her website, alextaylorracing.com, and get some of those t-shirts. I've still got some of the cab over shirts because we made a second order, and she's got some really nice apparel as well. She's got a new sweater that's selling like hotcakes, or not sweater, what do you call it, sweatshirt, that's selling like hotcakes because it's really a cool piece. She wants to do more of that kind of nice apparel instead of just t-shirts. So go check that out. If you've got a wife that likes sweatshirts, she'll really like this one, I think. And she's also, I'm going to insert at the end of this, right after this, a little clip of her in the car when we actually started up. But it's about her. She's got a promotional deal with Sick the Mag, and if you go to sickthemag.com and click on her, I guess there's 4 or 5 different people on there, influencers. If you click on her, you'll save 10% on your tickets. So if you want to come to Sick Week and watch this thing and everybody else, go on Sick the Mag and click her name, and she'll get a little bit of credit for it, and you'll save 10%. So I think it's 10%. Is that right?
That's right.
10%. Okay, so that's a good deal. But so that's what this is. Since this didn't fit into one video, I had to take her little section of that clip out and put it in this one. It may look a little bit strange, but she wanted to get that in before we head to Sick Week. So check all that out, and don't forget to check back for part 2, and make sure that you get to see that Mika Moose at the racetrack. She's going to be there selling her t-shirts probably. Are you going to sell your t-shirts at the track? You want to go racing? You're going to go to the track and race and tell everybody that you're going to have some t-shirts? So she's pretty proud of her t-shirts, and she loves the racetrack. So we'll see you there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Add a promo into your video.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure he told you we're getting ready for Sick Week. If you guys are coming to Sick Week, go to the Sick the Mag where you get tickets, wherever that's at. We'll put a link below, and use code AT Racing. Just AT and then Racing, and you get 10% off of your tickets.
To get in to watch.
Yeah.
Is that per track or is that the whole event?
However you purchase your ticket. So it's
You can
like,
buy it either way.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think that's correct. Yeah.